Hi, good evening, and welcome to my daily live session on various topics for execution excellence. My name is Dinakar. I'm the founder of Samuthana and the inventor of DoHow, a methodology for driving teams to achieve challenging goals and amazing outcomes. And while doing so, getting them to acquire leadership skills by changing the mindset and culture and acquire management skills by progressing on the journey towards smart manufacturing. I do this in two different ways because leadership is all about people, which means this mindset and culture, what you see on the top on the right side here, is the understanding of mindset and culture, for which you can also watch a separate video. And unless the mindset and culture changes, people and inspiring people is going to be a challenge. And on the other hand, management is all about systems, and then systems can only be achieved if there is a continuous or a continual PDCA cycle in companies, or the plan, do, check, act cycles in the companies. And what you see on the top here is the description of the various levels of maturity in an organization for achieving smartness in manufacturing, and that's what I've been doing in the last a couple of weeks. And this week too, it will be the same topic. I will be talking about the one of the last week I spoke about people cycle, and this week I talk about the performance cycle. That is what I'll be speaking about today, where smartness can be implemented. And that's a very brief introduction. And if you want to know more, please do visit dinakarmurthy.com, my website, or you can also write an email to me. dinakar@samuthana.com is my email address. With that very brief introduction, let us directly jump into today's topic, which is about smart manufacturing. I've been talking about this every week. Last week, I realized that I should have. See, it's quite interesting. When I speak more, I get more clarity. And last week, I felt that it is better to use the word algorithm instead of control. So I start with this slide, which is talking about the basic control cycle in any smart activity. Any control cycle would have an algorithm, which is a plan. Algorithm is something which really connects the cause and effect. After understanding the cause and effect, to really create an algorithm to really understand how the effect is getting generated by various causes or multiple causes, a combination of causes. And only after understanding the cause and effect can one do a plan. So this is the first activity. Next would be to actuate that based on the algorithm which is created, to actuate it. Actuate could be anything, which is the doing phase of the plan, do, check, act cycle, and then sensing, which is the checking phase of the plan, do, check, act cycle, and finally correction, because once the actuation is done, some job would be done, and then to sense what happened in the reality, and based on that do a correction. That is the cycle that I'm talking about. This is the fundamental control cycle which is necessary for any kind of smartness. Most of the time what happens is we do open loop controls, which means you have an algorithm or assume to have an algorithm, and after that actuate it. That's it. And there is no sensing done, there is no correction done, and that doesn't really help anybody. You're only trying to start off a lot of activities, initiate a lot of activities without any end. That is not really smartness all about. Smartness is about close looping. People say that you close loop the activity, close loop the task which has been given to you, which means you execute the task, check where do you stand, and after that correct if necessary, so that the end goal can be achieved. That is these are the four cycles in an environment or ambient, because again there is an influence there, because ambient and environment is influencing. It could be people influence, it could be temperature influence, it could be pressure influence, it could be multiple humidity influence. So all these things are all affecting there, and that's something which is very important to note. And that's the reason why constant checking is necessary in any environment. So with that first introduction to the basic control cycle, let me go on to talk about the various cycles which I've been speaking about. I'll just add a pointer here so that it becomes easy. Yeah. So I spoke about the product cycle the first week, and after that the second week was process cycle, and the last week was people cycle. Because in any organization, before we look at any magnanimous change or transformation or whatever it is, these three pillars are foundation for any company. First is there should be a product, which is what the core business is all about, and after that there should be definitely something uh, which is the process cycle, and then after that the people cycle. There is one LinkedIn user, I don't know who the person is, I don't know his name. There is a question here, being a fresher, how can it be implemented? something which is interesting. I think for that we need to really have a chat. You do write to me. I said my email is dinakar@samutana.com, and after that we can speak about that. Then we can learn as to how it can be implemented, because I don't think expertise is required. This is basically to be able to understand what is called as computational thinking. I think as a fresher, any person would have gone through this in college. It is computational thinking, which is basically to understand the problem, then abstract it, then after that split it out into small bits and pieces, then understand the logic. And once that algorithm is understood, then it can be implemented. It's not really a big deal. So that's something which we can do. Please do write to me. And Hanuman Jat, thanks a lot for your feedback. And I just interrupted that because that was an interesting comment, which question which came up. So I spoke about people cycle. These are the three pillars. Once these three pillars are available, then we can look at performance. And what is the performance cycle all about? That's what will be the topic for the week. I will start with the first phase of the performance cycle, which is the algorithm phase. Algorithm phase is where you are trying to define the cause and effect and set up a base. That is the plan cycle of the plan phase of the PDCA cycle, which is the first phase. So we will go to that and look at it what it is. In the performance cycle, the first phase is to define an organization structure and roles. Because now we have got a product, we have got a process which is established, that process is working well, and there are people who are trained to work on those processes. Now we need to really create a structure, an organization, so that the performance can be enhanced and the performance can be duplicated. That's what the mass manufacturing or mass production is all about. So now we need to really create a structure. So the first thing is, when you have got so many people around, each person has understood what to do, what job he has to do, what role he is doing, but then there is nothing which is binding them together. And that kind of a binding is required for leadership. I said we talk about both leadership and systems. This is a leadership skill which is required for creating a purpose and values in the organization. This is something which is something one can say as a foundation of excellence, to really look at creating a purpose and values. That is the first topic, so that everybody can get bonded towards one goal. And many say that, look, you don't have a purpose and vision strategy and so many things for smaller organizations. Not required. As you are growing up in an organization, the first thing which is required is a product which can sell, and the second thing which is required is a process which is stable. That is the core, because the customer is paying for the process, paying for the conversion from A to B, and that conversion is what is happening during a process. That has to be stable. So that's the first thing, which is extremely important. And then, of course, the people are required to really execute that process, and that's the next activity. Once these three basics are in place, then let us look at purpose, vision, mission, and values and all that. I've gone to companies where they've said we have engaged consultants to really do our purpose, vision, mission, and values, and we spent a lot of money, and finally we got the wording done, but really it didn't impact on our bottom. Of course, it doesn't impact on the bottom line, because unless the basics are in place, it doesn't make any sense. Another big company, a large company, they wanted someone as an expert in business excellence to conduct a workshop for vision and mission. The idea was that they had a vision and mission, they wanted to update it, and after that get it released. But the situation there was very interesting. The CEO was new. He was the top man was new. The big company, a large company, and his direct reportees were all kind of foreigners for him, because there was no connect. There was no and he had some idea, so he wanted to put that through vision and mission. So I said the first thing we need to do is really get the people together, get them little loosened out, so that there is a kind of a common understanding and a common purpose which is developed. The purpose is about creating something which is common, which is something which can be shared with everybody, and that is very, very important. So that's something which is today unfortunately only possible through human intelligence. There's nothing automated which is possible. Of course, there is possible which you can do. You can cut and paste words from internet and create fantastic presentations, but that doesn't really help. And purpose, vision, mission, and values are a lot to do with human intelligence, and it is important that there is a lot of discussion which happens there. The only thing that can be done in terms of smartness is to really get somebody who is an expert, who has understood these three foundations, that is the product, process, and people. Only then purpose comes into picture. Then the next one would be to create a strategic business plan and annual operating plan. This is again to really, again, I'm talking about a larger group now. Let us say a company has got about 500 people, 600 people, or 300 people, 200 people. Not in terms of tens or hundreds, I would not really go for that. Strategic business plan and annual operating plan. All this can be done between the finance guy and the CEO. If it's a small company, there is no need for such a long activity. This is required for deploying targets and goals to everybody, because otherwise the direction will not be set that clearly. Then, of course, have policies, guidelines, standard operating procedures. Then finally, define the roles, responsibilities, and the reporting hierarchy. These are very, very key in the organizational structure. Why is it that we have got organizational structures in a way it is developed, where you've got a hierarchy, a pyramid of this kind? Basically, because there is some intent at the top, and that intent has to get translated to the bottom, and the same direction everybody have to follow. That's the whole concept of building up a hierarchy. But of late, it is not at all the case. Whenever I go to companies, the subordinates, the boss doesn't really demand any routines from the subordinate, just gets him to do something which is for the way he would or she would like to do it, but then doesn't really get much out of that, because when you are having a hierarchy, it's important that there are standard routines which have to be followed by everybody. And that's the reason why you have a hierarchy. Otherwise, you could build self-governing teams who are basically working on some purpose, some outcome, and then that outcome can come because of the way that they do, without any standardization at all. And that doesn't really give any big leverage in organizations, and it doesn't definitely support performance. So if you need to have performance, hierarchy is required. Roles and responsibilities have to be defined, and of course there is some kind of a standard routines which have to be defined along the entire hierarchy. So the hierarchy has to be working as per that standard routines. So this foundation is the first step of the performance cycle. If this is not done, then having a strong performance management system, or which can be used for enhancing the performance in organizations, will not really be of much use. The only area where we could use some amount of smartness here is in roles, responsibilities, and roles and responsibilities. I mentioned about this sometime back in the people cycle. There is what is called as the NSDC portal, that is National Skills Development Corporation portal, where there are QPs defined. QP is something like a job description for various roles. You can talk about machinist to supervisor to technician in quality, technician in maintenance, supervisor in production, then sales guy, purchasing executive. So the multiple roles are there for each industry specific. You got roles defined for machine tool industry, for automotive sector, for maybe one of these days I'll show that to you. It's quite interesting, very interesting in fact. And that's something which you can also Google. You write down NSDC QP NOS, QP for qualification pack, NOS for national operating standards. So that's a database with all these things defined there. So imagine if something like that were there, then from that database you pick up the roles automatically based on the job description that you have in the organization. And based on that, there are some mandatory activities to be done, and again some additional activities to be done. It's listed out very thoroughly, and in my opinion it's very, very comprehensive. So please look at that, and using that database one could to some extent automate creation of job descriptions. That's the only place where smartness in terms of technology can be used in this particular phase of the performance cycle, which is organization structure and roles. Otherwise you can only use computers to make hierarchy charts and organizational charts and things like that, but then nothing much in terms of smartness. Let us go to the next step and see what can be done there tomorrow. That would be the topic for the day tomorrow, which would be to look at how do you delegate work and tasks. This is something which I want to speak tomorrow with a lot of detailing. Maybe I extend a little, because this is the area where smart manufacturing, smart management can be introduced in a big way, in a very, very big way. And that's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. So looking forward to meeting you again tomorrow at 8:30. Thanks a lot for watching my live streaming. For those of you in India, have a nice evening. For those of you outside India, have a great day ahead, and see you both tomorrow at 8:30. And then let's say goodbye, and see you tomorrow.